Hello and welcome to the latest episode in the C-Suite podcast Charity Spotlight series, which today we're producing in partnership with Haven House Children's Hospice, a charity caring for seriously ill children and their families. My name is Rachel Gatley, and the theme for today's discussion is the concept of compassionate business practice, exploring whether the workplace has a responsibility to support employees who are experiencing challenging times with their family's health, and if so, how? We have a packed panel for our discussion today. Joining me online are Haven House CEO Ralph Coulbeck and lead nurse Raphaella Corbishley, and Malcolm Hitching, a partner at the law firm Macfarlanes. We'll also hear from Harry Hastings, who is the co-CEO and co-founder of Ocean Holidays, and Chris Thomas, Chief Executive Officer of Artes Specialty, both of whom are parents of children who've been supported by Haven House. So, Ralph, let's start with you. Tell us about Haven House and the work that your team does there.
Thanks, Rachel, and thanks so much for having us on the podcast today. We're absolutely delighted to be here. Haven House is one of 54 children's hospices in the UK. We're a network and we provide support to children and families living with serious illness. And that means children that might have a life-threatening or a life-limiting condition would come to us for support, a range of support that I'll talk about. Haven House is based in a really, really beautiful woodland setting in Woodford Green. Woodford Green's in East London. And we care for a population of about 1.5 million in London and Essex. That's our catchment population. And within that population, at any one time, there'd normally be about 300 families where a child has had a diagnosis of serious illness, where we would be providing care and support to the child or the family. And we provide that support here at the hospice, which is where I am today. We provide it at home, and we also provide it in hospital where needed. The support we provide is really quite wide-ranging, and it includes respite care, which means children would come to us for a short period of time so that their family, who would be their main carers, can have a period of respite, a break. And that's a very popular service that adds a huge amount to families. We also provide daycare here at the hospice, and we can also go into the home to provide daycare. And as part of that, we provide a really wide range of therapies. Therapies make a huge difference to children and families living with serious illness. And we provide music therapy, yoga, physiotherapy, and a range of counselling support as well. And then on top of that, we provide support to families. So that might be practical support, emotional support, and we also bring families together at events, and we provide events to siblings as well, because siblings are often significantly affected when there's a diagnosis of serious illness in the family. So there's a whole range of different support there. We do also provide end-of-life care. So both at the hospice and in the home, we will care for a child at the end of life and also provide bereavement support after death. Now, end-of-life care it's a small part of what we do. It's clearly a very important part, but actually a lot of our work is about improving the quality of life, helping children to reach their potential. And it's a common misconception about children's hospices that end-of-life care is the only thing we do. It's obviously a part of what we do, but it's a relatively small element of our work. A thing we hear commonly from families, and I think we're going to talk about this theme today, is the sheer impact of a diagnosis of serious illness and the range of support that families often need and benefit from in that situation. And I think that's a hugely important part of what we do, caring for the whole family. Now, we work closely with the NHS and social care, but we are a charity, and that means we rely on voluntary support and donations for about 3/4 of our income. We have a turnover of about 6 million, and we need voluntary support for about 3/4 of that funding. So the kind of relationships we're going to talk about today, the way we work with businesses and other supporters, that support is really fundamental to what we do as an organisation and to making sure that we can carry on doing that work. So really pleased to be here today to talk a bit more about that work.
Ralph, thank you very much. And I'm going to come to Raphaella now, because in your role as lead nurse at the hospice, I believe that you often speak about the importance of a whole family approach to care. What do you mean by this, and why, in your experience, are compassionate business practices so important for the families of the children that you look after?
Thank you, Rachel. Our philosophy here at Haven House is the child at the centre of everything, but we do have a family-centred approach and care model, and that means that we provide support not just for the seriously ill child, but everyone that might be impacted by that, including their wider circle of care. So not just siblings and parents, but also extended family and grandparents, anyone really who supports the care of that child. And we provide emotional, practical respite, sibling support, counselling. And it's really important because having a seriously ill child has many different phases. There's the diagnosis, and there's a period, there can be periods of stability, instability, there can be periods of deterioration, and obviously for some children, there might be end-of-life care. And the difference with children's hospices to adult hospices, which is possibly a little bit not understood, is that we support families all through the journey, from the moment of diagnosis to death and beyond, if that is the trajectory of that child. Now, for some of our families, that might mean that they are supported by us for many, many years, not just in the end of life phase. So all of that time that they're known to us, we are working with them to support them and to try and improve quality of life for everyone, really. And in that long period of time, life doesn't stop. Work still needs to happen. Parents have many different roles as carers, as employees, and compassionate and supportive employers have a huge role while then employees are navigating these stages to really get the best out of them and to support them.
Chris, you've had personal experience of the support that Haven House provides. Would you share your story with us?
Yeah, thank you. Happy to. And I think Raphaella set it up perfectly for me, because a lot of what she's just explained really was effectively the contents table of our first 2 years after Annabelle's diagnosis. So Annabelle was diagnosed with SMA type 1, spinal muscular atrophy type 1, a good few years ago now, just over 7 years ago now. And we were just in a local general hospital. There was no specialist care at the time. We'd been there for a long time, and she was getting worse. And the day before Christmas Eve, we were told she's got spinal muscular atrophy type 1, and we were handing a piece of paper, and it said, at the top of it, life expectancy 18 months. So it was kind of like, wow, that was a lot to take in. News like that is always difficult. So you're dealing with that already, and then you just go into a mode of, well, what does this mean for us? And you're hit with a huge amount of information. You're introduced to a whole swathe of different people in a very, very short space of time. I guess, the terminology is, you've only got so much bandwidth. You're being told that your child's got a terminal condition, and now you've got to kind of be told that they're not going to eat. You've got feeding machines, all of this stuff. All of this equipment, it's an absolutely cataclysmic life change, and I would say even the hardiest of families will be truly challenged, and we had a decent family, very supportive friendship group, but the overarching feeling was just being very alone, very exposed, and quite scared, and where Haven House stepped in, and I won't lie, the district nurse, who was amazing, this nurse called Rosie, had to take my wife, not kicking and screaming, but she had to drag my wife up to Haven House because the connotations of hospice were death, and it's so far from that. But that's the general opinion until you educate people. So when myself and Mish went up there and were introduced to the team, and it just immediately felt like a big warm hug and a reassuring hug and a kind of, we will hold your hand through this. And that's what we needed, because it was almost, it was a bit like a compass. Like, we didn't know which way to turn, and they were like, right, here, and we can support you through all of that. as our journey with Annabelle's condition progressed, it was slightly different for us, and thankfully we're not at a kind of terminal care situation. That's not where we're at now. The treatments have changed significantly, but throughout those first 2 years, when especially when your child can't talk to you because they're so young, having Haven House on the doorstep when she was getting ill, and we were, do we suction, do we use cough assist, what's going on? Having those people there, professionals, experienced, compassionate people who understood what was happening. You can't replace that. You can't put a value on that. That's something that's just so immensely kind and wonderful to help families. And what it does is allow you as a family to get back on your feet, frankly.
Chris, that's an amazing story, and thank you so much for sharing it with us. I understand that through that process that you experienced quite a difficult time in the workplace, that in fact your workplace made things quite difficult for you. Would you talk about that, perhaps?
I'd be happy to. I think I'll just reframe that slightly. I think rather than the workplace made things difficult for me, particular individuals made things very, very difficult. I think just to set the scene here, and I've set my own business up. Obviously, this is the forefront of everything we do. Workplaces have policies, they have HR departments, and they spend a huge amount of money structuring those. So, the framework is there. When something like this happens, certain things should happen, and therefore the employee is given the support and protection they need. I think what the workplace can't legislate for is individuals within the workplace and cultures that are inherent to workplaces, which I'll talk a little bit about later. So, my own experience was I was going through a difficult time at work already. There was a lot of transition. A lot of companies had been bought, and it was, it was a very kind of acquisition-heavy company. So we had a lot going on there. Then I was out of the workplace for a considerable amount of time, over 2 months, but still interacting as much as I could. And then, I got back, and this is pre-COVID. So the concept of working from home was still, it was frowned upon. It was called shirking from home. And it was, a very weird, I think it was quite particular to the city and the financial sector. But this idea that if you were at home, you therefore weren't working, when we've had the technology to do so. And what I experienced was, one particular individual who, I said, look, I need to work from home. That was agreed for everything I was going through. And I've been very open and honest with everyone. This is our journey. I can still be here to lead, but, I need some consideration. I need to be at home 2 to 3 days a week as we navigate our way through this. And at first it was, yeah, that's fine. And then slowly but surely, as time progressed, it was made quite apparent that it wasn't fine, and actually culminated with frustratingly a private conversation, which in hindsight, I wish someone else had been there, and I'd requested HR to have been there, where the words to me were, well, maybe this isn't going to work for us because you can't lead when you're at home, and maybe you should consider finding somewhere else to work. So I, as I exited that business, because as far as I was concerned, right, I can't work here. This is not what I'd expect or appreciate. Certainly not how I would treat an employee. I did report that to, through the exiting process. And, I believe that certain individuals were given training following that, because frankly, I didn't take that message particularly well, as you would expect no one to. But delivering that kind of message to someone who was in a more vulnerable position than me could have had significant consequences. And that's the reality of what we're dealing with here. I think flippant remarks can cause quite considerable pain and suffering. You have to be very, very careful in how you approach these things. And I'll talk about the cultural aspects later, because I think there's a broader piece to be spoken about post-COVID. There are unbelievably some positives about that whole COVID situation. But yeah, my experiences were, individuals rather than workplaces. And from what I've seen of recent times when I'm interacting with other execs and other and other employees or people working in the city who have similar situations to mine is that companies have taken giant leaps and strides ahead to deal with these kind of situations.
Thank you for sharing that, Christopher. It sounds like a pretty awful experience all round, but great to hear that it inspired you to create what is now a very successful business. So that's good news. But I'd like to move also now to Harry, because I know that you've also had personal experience with Haven House. So perhaps you could talk us through your experiences, Harry.
Thanks, Rachel. Chris, really great to hear your journey and everything you've been through there. It's really interesting hearing it. Mine's slightly different in that my wife and I, Nicola, we lived near Haven House, and we got married in 2018, and we chose a local charity for our guests at our wedding, to, instead of giving us gifts, to give to a local charity, and we chose Haven House. We went down to Haven House to check it out, and it was a really lovely experience, and everything that Raphaella was just saying about, and Chris backed up there about how, Haven House is a place where people go to live, not necessarily go to die, although that is part of the part of what does happen there. And we came away with such a lovely feeling, and so we had a big wedding, we got married abroad, and instead of taking gifts, everyone's presents was our gift, and we asked people to donate to Haven House. And then I think we raised, I don't know, £6,000 or £7,000, and we had a tree. We've still got it today, a silver tree in the garden, and that was in 2018. And as many newly married couples do, we went on to start a family, and our son Rudy was born on the 12th of March 2020. I'm one of the founders at Ocean Holidays. We're a Florida holiday specialist, so we're one of the largest Florida holiday providers in Europe, and one of the largest outbound holiday providers to the US and the UK. So Rudy was born on the 12th of March 2020, the same day that Disney World was shut. Now, Disney World being shut doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people, but to us and our business that we've built up, it's 21 years this year. It's quite a big deal when the pandemic hit, and it was also the same day that Rudy was born. Within a few months, we noticed he had problems with his vision. He was floppy, and he wasn't developing like a typical newborn. And then in June, he started to have seizures, and we rushed him to Royal London Hospital, where we went into that whole process that Chris was describing there about getting the diagnosis and seeing the various specialists and etc. Really fortunately for us, the blood test went off, and often with rare genetic conditions, you don't get a diagnosis. So by October, we actually got a diagnosis within 3 months. So somebody at a laboratorist at Great Ormond Street was able to take Rudy's bloods and take his symptoms and match it to a very rare genetic condition to do with the gene PIGN, of which, to our knowledge, there's less than 100 diagnosed in the world, and only a fair few. You can count on one hand how many are in the UK and Ireland. So yeah, that was in October. So that was roughly 6 months after Rudy was born. So we finally got a diagnosis, and then Nicola and I took Rudy to Haven House. It was in lockdown, so Haven House were partially open and made special arrangements. I'm sure we all remember the various ways we were navigating hospitals and doctors and schools and whatever else we were trying to navigate. We were all trying to navigate at the time. So we went to Haven House, and it was that sort of comfort and that beginning of this journey, that support. It was the first time you felt like, we were lost until we got to Haven House, and it was like, right, okay, this is what happens now. The head of care at the time gave us a box of sensory toys, wooden toys. I'll never forget that box of wooden toys. And we sat in the boardroom at Haven House, and we sat down and said, have you ever had a corporate sponsor have come to you with a child's diagnosis? And they were like, no, this has never happened before. And then it all went from there. I also missed out in that story that after our wedding, in 2019, prior to when Rudy was born, Ocean Holidays committed to a corporate partnership to Haven House to raise I think we've committed to £25,000 over a couple of years. And in 2020, we did that as well. So the same year Rudy was born, Ocean Holidays, independently of Rudy's diagnosis, also continued to raise funds for Haven House as a corporate partner. And obviously Rudy's diagnosis sat alongside it as this sort of bizarre twist in it all. So it's a unique story, really, in terms of how we've come across Haven House, our relationship, and we fundraise with them ever since, and our family uses their services every week.
Just to add some flavour to or context to Chris and Harry's stories, when we say seriously ill child, I think that everyone can imagine what the emotional impact of that is, and how challenging that is to navigate. But these parents who are also employees in the workplace or leaders in the workplace are also providing practical care and support to these children. They need 24-hour support, often overnight. They're running what would be considered to be almost mini hospitals in their home, and that never stops. The clock never stops on that. So there's both elements, both the practical and the emotional side.
And I think, Raphaella, in the challenge about families and the care that we're providing at home, and the challenge in the workplaces, and to your point, Chris, of the particular individual that you had challenges with, it's very, very difficult for people, unless they were to spend a weekend with you, or unless they perhaps have experience looking after elderly, maybe elderly parents or elderly relatives in their sort of stages of care in their life. I think it's very, very difficult for colleagues to have any idea of what you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis at home, and for them to, if they haven't experienced it, or they haven't seen it or have any first-hand knowledge, it's very difficult for people to comprehend the level of care that we're all doing at home. And unless you see it, I don't know, Chris, I don't know if that makes sense to you. I even get it with really good friends that you don't see that often, or relatives. They just don't understand. They don't, and you can't blame them for it, because they don't know, they've not seen it or experienced it themselves. And then you have somebody over for a day or 2 or 3 days, or you go and stay with them, and they're just in absolute shock and awe that you live this that you're having to operate in this way, in this totally different way from what was typical.
That resonates totally with me, Harry. First time we went on holiday with a group of friends after Annabelle's diagnosis, and I think that was a big eye opener for people, at kind of seeing the amount of equipment that you have to take, and then it was one of those situations where unfortunately one of the younger kids was ill. Annabelle got ill, and we had to kind of evacuate home very quickly. We were in Brittany. And again, just I think if you looked in the back of our car, it looked like a hospital, because I was just like, right, we're going home now. And it was, just chuck everything in the back, Misha's in the back with Annabelle and her breathing machine and everything else. And it was just one of those situations that was completely surreal, but for us was kind of normal. And I think it's only friends that have been in the military or who work in the care services that get it. And there's been times when I've spoken to friends, they're like, you carry around stuff like I used to carry around in Afghanistan. Like we not so much anymore, but that's the level of what you're doing here. But you make it work, and you find these little life hacks and everything else. So everything you're saying totally resonates with me, Harry, but that becomes your normal, and that's the new normal. And for a lot of people, they just don't get it. And that's okay.
Malcolm, I'd like to hear from you at this point, because we're starting to explore the topic of corporate partners. And I understand that Macfarlanes, the law firm that you work for, chose Haven House as their charity of the year in 2023, and that you then went on to raise the huge sum of £300,000 for the hospice over that year, which is seriously impressive. But I'm going to guess that perhaps the partnership went deeper than just fundraising alone. So what motivated you to choose Haven House in the first place? And what did this mean to the firm over 2023 and perhaps even beyond?
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Thank you very much for involving me in this discussion, which is extraordinary, just to listen to Chris and to Harry in particular. So thank you for involving me. Yeah, to set the scene, Macfarlanes has a long history of partnering with our charities of the year. It's an important part of our firm's DNA. Some of those partnerships are more successful than others in monetary terms, but all of them are really, really important to the firm and to its people. And to pick up on something that Chris and Harry have been saying, one of the most important aspects, I think, is educating educating us, educating all of our people as to some of the burdens, some of the issues that other colleagues need to carry. So the charity partnerships that we enter into are always driven by the enthusiasm and the commitment of our staff, some of whom feel extraordinarily passionately about a given cause that we try to support each year. And the Haven House partnership was inspired by a couple of particular personal connections, which actually made the relationship very powerful. So the first of those, the principal of those, is that one of our lawyers is related to one of your critical care nurses, one of Haven House's critical care nurses. So Imogen and Maya, sisters, very, very close, almost identical to the untrained eye, but one sister wanted to support the other, and Imogen wanted to support Maya in her work as a critical care nurse. One of my other colleagues has a friendship with one of the Haven House trustees, and speaking personally, I was born and raised about a mile away from Haven House. I knew one or two of the people that set Haven House up 21 years ago now, I think it is. And I've been very aware of that charity over the period of time as it's evolved. So that was the background. The partnership itself, though, was about so much more than just rattling tins. It gives people the opportunity to engage. It gives people the opportunity to support. And as important as money is, it has to be about more than that. And to give you a little bit of a illustration, more than 200 of our people volunteered their time in a wide range of ways, whether that was going down to Haven House to volunteer in the gardens, or whether it was going to charity shops, or whether it was undertaking fundraising events themselves, whatever it might be. There was something for everyone, which is very important to us. But fundamentally, by volunteering, by getting involved, it allowed those people to really gain familiarity with Haven House and its work. And actually, I would say it removed any fear factor that was there. One or two folk have already mentioned that the word hospice has certain connotations. And actually, by engaging with Haven House, getting to know people at Haven House and the staff at Haven House, it left a really positive, lasting impression. And a lot of our people, me included, were very moved by our visits.
Do you think then, Malcolm, that the partnership with Haven House has led to the team at Macfarlanes learning more about the importance of compassionate business? Do you think the experience has led to perhaps any new people policies or just general behaviours within the organisation?
I think it was a very powerful relationship, actually. And certainly speaking personally, I learned a lot from it. I think our firm benefited enormously from the relationship that we developed with Haven House, and hopefully there was some mutuality there as well. I mean, as a firm, we have a strong focus on supporting our people as best we can in that true holistic sense. To be businesslike for a moment, our firm is not there to solve all of life's problems and stresses. It's not realistic that we can do that. It's impossible that we can do that. But we do need our people in a business-like sense. We need our people to be on their very best form if they are going to look after clients to optimal effect. We seek to provide a working environment which allows people to thrive in all senses. And what does that mean in practice? It means supporting people through very tough times. So we have a whole range of different support networks. We have a mentoring program. We have any number of policies. But actually, the most important thing, I think, is that senior people within the business actually buy into the ethos of trying to support people at work and in their lives more broadly to enable them to then give their best in a business context. So by having that ethos, and also by partnering with a charity, providing people with positive opportunities to get involved with causes that they feel passionate about, we effectively allow people to take pride in their support, take pride in their work, take pride in the fact that they are getting alongside a cause that they really do feel passionately about. And for me, I mean, you use the phrase, interestingly, compassionate business. For me, I think compassionate business essentially means optimizing people's ability to do their jobs to best effect by empowering them and by supporting them. And I hope that's what we do.
It sounds like it's definitely been a partnership that's had benefits for both parties in this case. On that, Ralph, I wonder what you would say to any other companies out there considering partnering with charities such as yours about the benefits that such a relationship can bring.
Yeah, I would say don't just consider it. I would say do it. It's a fantastic thing for a business. I can't really improve on Malcolm's articulation of the benefits, but clearly, businesses talk all the time about values. This is a way to actually demonstrate your values very, very, very tangibly to your employees, to your customers, to everybody in your business. And I think that's the fundamental benefit. An organisation like Haven House, we are a smaller charity. Our turnover, as I say, is around £6 million. So partnering with a charity like us, you can raise funds that make a huge difference to our business. You heard the sum that Macfarlanes helped to raise for us. That has a huge impact on a charity of our size. But we are experienced at corporate partnerships. We do have dedicated teams that support this work, and we can offer quite a range of different benefits for the business. The direct fundraising, clearly. We also support challenge events, which can engage employees in different ways. We support a range of volunteering, as Malcolm mentioned, so you can come and get involved hands-on with working with us. And we also offer tours of the hospice as well, which has that really important educational benefit in terms of understanding what we do, seeing what we do, seeing, as Chris and Harry described really well, that the hospice is absolutely a positive place, a positive environment, and then a place that we really come together and provide support. And I think fundamentally that takes us to culture, which Chris spoke about really eloquently. All of those things taken together have a highly positive impact on company culture. And, I think company culture is probably the thing that more than anything people consider when they're considering where to work, and that also influences whether people stay in a role. And I think that will only get more and more the case with the kind of social trends that we're seeing. So if you want to have an experience that has a really positive impact on your company culture, then a partnership with an organisation like Haven House is absolutely the way to do that.
I was just going to add that as a carer myself, I think that a charity that provides care is a really universal and uniting experience. For most employees, almost everyone will have some experience of a caring role, maybe as a parent or for a relative. And serious illness is something that doesn't discriminate. It affects people from all walks of life. And so, what it says about you as an organisation, that it's a priority, I think resonates with a lot of people.
I think it's a really important point, Raphaella. And I should have mentioned when I spoke before that we select our charity of the year by way of popular vote within the firm. And it's, everyone in the firm, from the most senior to the most junior in that sense, has a vote. And I think part of the reason that Haven House won the vote is the reasons that you've just said. Everyone can identify with Haven House in some way, shape or form. I'm privileged to be a father of 2 daughters. I've not had to use the Haven House facilities in my own family context, but I know of others who have. And speaking as a parent, I can look at those facilities, I can look at the work Haven House does and think, my goodness me, that could so easily be me. It resonates with me. I think everyone else that I spoke to within Macfarlanes, whether they were parents, whether they were grandparents, whether actually they just had siblings or whatever it would be, everyone can see that this actually matters fundamentally.
Just building on Ralph and Raphaella's and Malcolm's point, because you've spoken a lot about the corporate, the corporate relationship, the corporate partnerships. I think, I'm a founder of a small business. We are in the process of bridging that gap into the corporate partnership with Haven House. We've supported them privately as a family for many years. But I just like to say, a lot of small businesses will go, well, we're not ready for that yet. We're not quite there on our journey. There are so many other ways you can support Haven House. There's the ball. There's quizzes that they put on. We're about to attend a quiz there where we're spreading the wider word into the financial industry about Haven House, making people aware of it. So I think it's worth just saying that you don't have to jump straight into that aspect if you're not quite there on the journey. There are so many other routes in, like I say, where you can offer huge amounts of support still. And I think that was just worth saying more from a small business perspective.
That's right. Our fundraising happens on so many different scales, as Chris said, from the very large events right through to very much more local events. Every aspect of our fundraising matters, and so it doesn't matter what scale you want to be involved. There's an opportunity at all those different levels to be involved and to help us.
Thank you, Ralph, and everybody. That's really helpful. I'm just going to bring things back now to the compassionate business concept, because Chris, you've talked about your experience with your previous employer. But how do you think things could have been handled better? What would you suggest to business leaders that they could learn from your experience so that they don't repeat some of those mistakes?
I think it's not just learning, I guess, from my experience. I think we as a society learned a huge amount from going through COVID. I think until that point, there had been this culture and emphasis, certainly in my industry, on 5 days a week in the office. You're doing a 9 to 5, but you're not doing a 9 to 5. You're working much longer hours at times. And some people, I think there was this kind of mask of corporate camaraderie. Let's not confuse two things here. Competitive capitalism versus actually being effective in your job and time management and working together as a team to produce an end result and taking into account everyone's backgrounds and everyone's different situations are two very different things. COVID turbocharged us being able to say we don't have to be sat at a desk to make corporate decisions. The office has a place in the corporate world, but we don't have to be there 5 days a week for this to work. So through watching what happened with COVID and the move away from just having to be in the office, I think some of the culture has moved already. It's been forced to move, which is only a good thing. And then when you then supplement that with the broader aspect of actually looking at people's mental health, and I think this is what we're talking about here. And Malcolm, you touched on it really, really well around how effective my employees are or the people that work for me. Well, most of that is, yes, you can have physical disabilities. We've seen that they're visible, but what were not visible were the mental health issues. So, COVID also brought that to the forefront. Are people okay? These are all things that when you're a caregiver, you were already fully aware of, but suddenly they became apparent to a much broader audience. So, to answer the question, I'm starting to see rumblings back in my industry and further afield around 5 days a week again. I don't think that's the solution here. I think what we need to acknowledge is we are in a different world. We are, we're as effective as all of the team members are, and we need to take into account, how everyone, I don't want to use the word feeling, but how, we need to take into account how people work best. Frankly, it's amazing how resilient human beings can be, even under pressure. But sometimes you need to allow them to set the criteria of the pressure that you're applying to them. So, allow them, talk to them, listen to them. You can tell the difference between someone who is flagrantly taking advantage of a situation and someone who's saying, hey, look, I'm really proud of what I do, but I'm under a huge amount of pressure here and I need to potentially change the way I work for you. I'm going to do it working with you to find the best possible outcome. And I think I'm seeing a lot of that, but it does worry me when I hear rumblings of we want everyone back at the desk 5 days a week. I don't think that's the outcome that's going to work here.
Harry, How have you balanced your role as a senior business leader alongside your own caring responsibilities?
I'm a business owner and a business leader, so and we employ almost 200 people. And as I mentioned earlier earlier on, the timing of Rudy being born and his diagnosis clashed with pandemic and a travel business. So the two combined are, and it is an absolutely impossible situation because as most hospitality businesses, travel businesses, leisure businesses, we were all fighting for our lives for a couple of years. I think when you look back over the last couple of years, so when I look back on an individual level, and I'll talk a little bit about the support that I got shortly, and Chris mentioned it earlier, is human beings, we're able to adapt and survive and the most incredibly difficult situations, and you don't know what you're capable of until you actually do it, and then you look back and say, how on earth did we actually do that? And I think that that's been, I couldn't define it as some sort of framework or anything like that. You are just in it, and you're reacting to things that are happening to you. And there's no it's so true in life that it's not about the things that happen to you, it's how you react to them. And I think that in the moment you're doing what you have to do to survive. That's on an individual basis. In terms of my support and my colleagues and my business partners and my family, I've been really, really lucky that at home we have amazing care for Rudy with direct family members who have really, really stepped up. We've got an amazing community, so Haven House is part of that community. I think I'm very lucky as a business owner in that I can work any hours I want, wherever I want, whenever I want. I have that choice, and that flexibility has enabled me to be able to run the business as well as make sure that I'm there for Rudy as best I possibly can. I could have had business partners which were less tolerant, but I haven't. I have the most fantastic business partners who I've worked with for more than 20 years. We founded the business, 2 sets of brothers, me and my brother, and 2 other guys, David and Dan, who are brothers. And, they have never, ever questioned anything about where I am, what I'm doing, and why I'm doing it. And at any time I've needed space, they've given me that space and never challenged me on the demands that I have at home. And then in terms of colleagues, I think at Ocean Holidays we've created a culture. We talk about doing the right thing all the time in our business, and we talk about operating with high integrity. And I think those values are steeped throughout the business, so that if people in the workplace know that, Rudy, for example, was in intensive care for a few weeks last year, and during that period, I remember quite clearly people just stepped up. They didn't tell me they were doing it, but things just got done where they needed to be picked up, and I hadn't told them it needed to be picked up. And I think you create a culture, and you create that belief system within the organisation, and it goes 2 ways. There's many people in our business that are carers themselves, and I like to think they get the same support. You can't control what Chris mentioned earlier, individuals. It's very, very, very difficult. You can create the most amazing frameworks and the best culture, and you can talk about doing the right thing and always lead by example. But unfortunately, you can't help that some individuals just don't understand, and that is very, very difficult to overcome. And that's why you have to just keep hammering it home, keep talking about things, keep making sure you're delivering that message that doing the right thing is so critical.
It sounds like some great advice to any business looking for ways to ensure that they're supporting their employees. Is there anything else that you'd add to the business leader who might be listening to this today and wondering how they can do more in their organisation to be empathetic and compassionate?
I think that the whole DEI space is a really interesting space for businesses and people. It would be great if businesses lent leaned into inclusivity for those that are disabled, those that for people that are carers, not just for their employees but for their customers as well. And I think that there's a lot of really good progress with neurodiversity, for example, and how people are employing people that are neurodiverse, and how you approach that, and how we think differently about the way other people think. I would strongly recommend that business leaders lean into DE&I on a holistic basis, and make sure they're thinking about both visible and hidden disabilities. And on a pure commercial sense, a high proportion of the most successful and wealthiest people in the world are neurodiverse. So if you make these allowances and you think about it, you can create the most incredibly high-performing teams if you just take a step back and don't try to have people that look like you and sound like you in the room all the time. And I'll just finish quickly on this note, Rachel. Often, if you have lots of people in a room in a team and everyone's getting on with each other and everyone's really nice to each other, you probably don't have the best team in the room. If you have a bunch of people in the room having a fierce debate, using evidence and data and argument, and coming at it with a range of diverse and different opinions, you're probably going to solve the problem in a better way, and you're going to have a higher performing team. So debate and discussion and data and diversity of thought is what makes businesses successful. Everybody looking the same and sounding the same and agreeing with each other is not progress.
Malcolm, having heard about Harry and Chris's experiences just now, how does being a compassionate business make a difference when it comes to recruitment and retention within your organisation? I'm thinking especially of the battle for top talent within the legal sector.
Yeah, it's a good question. For context, Macfarlanes is one of the world's top law firms. We have to recruit and retain the very brightest and the most driven people that we can find, because we have to look after our clients in the best possible way. And that's true of lawyers and non-lawyers, I should say. It's not just about the legal talent, it's just generally. But look, however intellectually able someone is, or however driven they might be, there is a lot more to life than work. And we need people, we want people to be happy and fulfilled. Firstly, because I think that's a good thing of itself. But secondly, because as I mentioned earlier, it actually then enables them to perform to the best extent. We are in a hellishly competitive business sector, and we need our people to be on the top of their game. And we therefore need to set the atmosphere and set the tone to enable them to do that. The people that we recruit, the talent pool that we fish in, those people can literally go anywhere. Not just in this country, they can go anywhere in the world. And we need to attract and retain the right people. And therefore we seek to create a business ethos and an atmosphere that allows people to be themselves and allows them to give of their best. And then that creates a very good and virtuous circle of high performance, personal fulfillment, personal contentment, high performance, and so on and so forth. And you'll note that I didn't use the word happiness, because life, to me at least, whilst it's nice to be happy, it's not realistic that everyone's happy every day. That's not life. But actually to be fulfilled and to be contented and to perform at a high level, they are tremendous attributes and tremendous aspirations, and we aim to allow our people to achieve that day by day.
And Raphaella, coming back to you again now, while you guys are actually based in Essex, I know that you're part of a wider network, so the type of support that you offer is available to listeners of our podcast way beyond your own local surrounding area. Could you talk us through that, please?
Yes, so we're one of 54 children's hospices in the UK, which covers all of England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. So if there is someone that you listening you think might benefit from hospice support, there probably is one in your local area. We have a parent body, Together for Short Lives, and you can have a look on their website to find your most local children's hospice. But generally children's hospices as a movement, the UK is at the forefront of it. We're not just in the UK. We have 54 here. There's 133 in Europe. There are 3 in America and 6 in Canada. And it's really growing as a concept, especially in Asia and the Middle East. We're seeing lots of children's hospices being set up. So even if you're not listening from the UK, there may be one local to you.
And thank you, Raphaella. So before we close today, having started with Ralph, I want to hand back to you again for the last word, Ralph. What difference in your experience does a more compassionate approach to business make, not only to the individual employees, but, to use your term, their whole family?
Well, I think we've heard from some of these stories today the difference it can make, both positively and negatively. I think in any walk of life, the way that we're supported in adversity is the thing that really makes a difference. The friendships that we have that really stick by us in difficult times are the ones that we value the most. And it's no different with our employer. I mean, Chris described a cataclysmic life change or life event, as a result of the diagnosis that Annabelle received. And if we support people when that happens, we gain their loyalty and we gain reward over time. And others see that happening, and so there's a virtuous circle of benefit. And if we don't do that, then obviously the opposite happens. And as we've seen in some of the examples, people will leave and they will take their skills and their talents elsewhere, and they will be successful elsewhere. So I think supporting people, being compassionate as a business, it's not just the right thing to do. It will bring benefit to your organisation in the ways that we've seen. And I guess the final message I would have is, don't wait for this. Be proactive. Go out and seek the local children's charity or the local charity or the local hospice that would benefit from your support and where you can gain benefit. And make that decision now and really start to influence your company culture in a positive way.
What a perfect way to close our discussion. And I want to say thank you to all of my guests, Ralph, Raphaella, Malcolm, Harry and Chris. And if anyone wants to find out more about the amazing work that Haven House does, please do visit havenhouse.org.uk. Meantime, we'd love to hear your comments on today's chat too, and you can share them on any of our social media feeds. Plus, it would be great if you could follow us on the likes of Spotify and Apple. And if you like what you heard, please do give us a positive rating and review. If you'd like to get in touch with the show, you can do that via the contact form at csuitepodcast.com. But for now, from me, Rachel Gatley, thank you for listening and goodbye.